I'm Sai Shivani and I have secured All India rank 11 in this year's Civil Services Exam. I recommend for you to go through the PYQs and then give certain mocks. Come at those as per the standard of the UPSC reading comprehension. So carefully, once you start practicing those PYQs, you will try to understand the themes. What are the themes that are being repeated? I'm Sai Shivani and I have secured All India rank 11 in this year's Civil Services Examination. And I come from an engineering background. So I have completed my electronics and communications engineering. So I've graduated in 2022 and since then I started preparing for UPSC exam. So this is my second attempt at UPSC and I've secured this 11th rank in my second attempt. In the previous first attempt, I could not clear prelims. So this is my personal brief introduction. And I will give the credit of this exam's clearance to my parents and my teachers, and this particular ambition of becoming a civil servant was there in my brain back in my schooling days. So as and when I progressed through college and university, this particular dream became stronger and I decided to pursue the civil services. So then I'll start by telling about the prelims preparation. The book list and the resources I'll comment down in this video, and the UPSC Time channel, they'll pin it down so that you can refer through the book list. And as far as prelims preparation is concerned, I'll tell that there are 4 important subjects in general studies which I call the foundational subjects. So they are the polity, history, economy and environment plus geography. So these 4 are the building blocks for the preparation. Once you are strong with these 4, the portion of your prelims paper, the GS paper especially, becomes very easy for you because the static understanding of these subjects is very important. And when it comes to the CSAT paper, we know that there are 2 sections, the reading comprehension and the math part. I'll come to the process of preparation and solving those papers in a while. So first, let me discuss what is needed for prelims preparation. So first things first, certain subjects are very important, so much so that you have to revise them thoroughly. So for example, let's take polity as a subject. So many of us are coming from other different educational backgrounds, not just humanities. So we have very little understanding of these subjects initially. But as and when we go through the preparation, we understand these subjects. It is important that we collect important data or important topics from these subjects and revise them time and again. For example, if we take polity, we have the articles, the constitutional articles, and we have the important chapters like parliament, center-state relations, and some things like miscellaneous things like the amendments. We remember a lot of these, but initially what happens is that we feel it a lot, like literally we feel there are a lot of topics or these minute factual information to memorize. So for that you have to break down the syllabus into different aspects. For example, I used to just note down what are all the important polity articles, constitutional articles. For example, say we know the fundamental rights and directive principles, but what are beyond them? So we have some other articles like 356, the emergency articles, and in between also we have some important articles. So I used to make one A4 size sheet and on which I used to write all the important articles by myself. I understand that there are already certain maps and this factual data sheets that are available online, but I prefer writing it by our own selves because in this process we not only just give it a glance, but few informations and these little factual things, they get seated in our brain. So I advise candidates to write on their own. So it is not too much, just a single page of articles. Once you write them and paste it on your wall, you can give a glance to it every day and naturally you will be aware of many of the important polity articles. So this is something to do with the factual stuff. And there are similar things for the other subjects like the maps for geography, wherein we have the map pointing for rivers, mountains, and all of them. And also if we take the environment subject, so we have the national parks, endangered species, and wildlife sanctuaries or biosphere reserves. What are all the national parks and protected areas included in one particular biosphere reserve? So all of these important topics, you can just make maps and you can give it a glance each and every day, so that this kind of information gets seated in your brain, and this also will act as an engaging activity for you in the prelims preparation. And other than that, if I talk about the economy, the subject economy, as we know, this subject is very practical. So while you are preparing economy, make your topics or make your static very clear. And once you're clear with your static, you can solve certain questions. And here I'll recommend you to solve a book called Eco 550. So in which there are almost 500 plus MCQs on various economy topics. So once you are done with your economy syllabus, you can just practice those MCQs, and this will make your conceptual understanding far better. And there are other important subjects like geography, wherein static understanding, crystal clear understanding of topics is very clear. So accordingly, you can schedule your preparation days, and you can plan the number of hours or number of days for different subjects according to your own interest. And when it comes to CSAT, firstly, in my first attempt also, I did not clear the CSAT cutoff. So it was 66.66, I guess. So I did not clear that also. So there are certain changes that I did in my second attempt. For example, I started understanding different topics that are handpicked by the UPSC to ask in the prelims CSAT paper. For example, in 2023 ka paper, we have seen that number system questions were asked a lot, and also probability, permutations and combinations. So questions from these topics are asked more in number. So I observed that these topics are very much important. So for the 2024 attempt, I prepared these topics, and additionally I also prepared the percentages and other important topics. So what is the material for preparation for CSAT? There is no absolute material, but yes, you can identify the PYQ themes. So from each of these topics, just identify what are the PYQs given and try solving them. After you solve them, you have to make a proper sheet. So for example, I'll show you what I made. So this is one sheet wherein I have written what are the common mistakes, common traps in CSAT. Like, I'll upload it soon in my Telegram channel. So there are certain important references that I have noted in this. So for example, check all the numbers given in the question. So these are certain minute mistakes we do under the pressure of those 2 hours. So for example, blood relation questions. So we tend to forget the gender after identifying the answer. So that is something. And for statement type questions and something like the overlook type mistakes. So there are certain traps and mistakes that we do. And similar is the thing for reading comprehension. See, I have also made something similar to this for reading comprehension. So I have noted that when there are certain extremities given in the question, like very sweeping generalizations, so and certain words like must, inherently, only. So according to these words, I have to be very careful whether the question is going too extreme or whether the question is actually very simple. So I have to identify these, and we will learn to analyze this only when we are thorough with the PYQ practice. So for CSAT questions, I would probably recommend for you to go through the PYQs and then give certain mocks. But as far as reading comprehension is concerned, I think no mock test will come close in the standard of the UPSC reading comprehension. So carefully practice reading comprehensions. So for example, in my case, I practiced from 2011 to 2023. So all these years, previous year questions in the reading comprehension section, I covered them multiple times and practiced a lot. So that is what the approach should be. So reading comprehension will become your weapon when the math is going very tough in the paper. So do not stick on to one single portion in CSAT. Do not take it lightly. Give it due amount of practice. And it's fine if you come from a good math background or whatsoever, but give it a decent amount of time. So practice PYQs and analyze different traps that are given in the questions, and according to that you can prepare. And the next segment in the prelims preparation will be probably the current affairs part, and there is a lot of confusion regarding this as well, because current affairs is a lot, and we seldom forget how much to read and how much to leave. This becomes a very important question, and here I'll advise you something. So first, as we start preparing for the UPSC exam, we all start with the newspapers. So firstly, you have to take one newspaper as a base and read it consistently. So why this newspaper is important is because you read the static concepts in different subjects, and this newspaper reading will make you understand the linkages between static and the current, and that is how the continuity, the flow, and the momentum in your preparation picks up. And you have to use compilations for revisions. This is because you cannot make your own newspaper notes every day, because it kills a lot of time. You have to read the static, complete the optional, practicing test, and whatso. So you have to be very careful here. You just read newspaper on a daily basis for just knowing things and making interconnections between your static and the current. And after a month, you will get different monthly compilations from various institutes. For example, I followed the Vision IAS monthly magazines, monthly current affair magazines. So in them, I used to read it section by section. Suppose under polity, there are certain current affairs given. Under economy, certain are given. So going through them, I'll just underline or highlight whatever is important. And if I am reading newspaper daily, I'll be knowing for sure that this particular news item has appeared some time before. So I'll make special emphasis on that important topic, and also write some value addition points there. So this is how I'll read the current affairs. And remember, for prelims, for the point of view of the prelims, current affairs are needed, especially for international relations, for knowing government schemes, covering science and technology questions, and mapping. So these particular segments of prelims will be covered through current affairs preparation. So this is how you have to go through the current affairs. And if I have to tell you broadly how to sum up the prelims preparation, so firstly, revision becomes a very important key, because we read a lot, and when you have to apply the data, apply the information that you have read through different subjects in prelims, you need to analyze the questions in the exam. So for that, revision a lot of times is very important. And for that, the process of revising is also important. For example, when we open the book of polity, it is our normal habit that we will start from the start, like the first chapter itself, the historical background and the different colonial era laws and all of that. But we commit a mistake, because once we start with the very first chapter in the book, until we read the important topics, we are almost drained out, we become exhausted. So that is how we place a lot of emphasis on topics which are not so important in the exam point of view, but we end up giving very less time to the topics that are actually important for the exam. So you see the parliament, the chapter parliament is somewhere in the part B or something in the Lakshmikant. But what you start for the revision is the colonial era laws in the historical background chapter. So this is where we are committing mistake. So I analyze this mistake, and then for each of these subjects that we have to study for the prelims, I identified some priority areas. So whenever I open the book for revision, I'll read the priority topics first. So then on, I'll read the remaining topics. In this way, I'll ensure that the most important topics are covered first. So my strength area becomes stronger. So this is a priority area sheet that I have prepared. So under this, there are different subjects. So under each of these subjects I have mentioned different topics that are important in the precedence manner. So for example, in history, if I open modern history, I'll read 1929 to 1947 period first. Then I'll read the period of 1885 to 1929. So this is how I scheduled or I analyzed different priority areas in each of the subject. And then I used to revise it. And one important tip that I can give you for prelims is that active recalling is the one technique that will help you save a lot of time and also gain confidence in revising prelims part. For example, in this active recall technique, we just close the book and we just mention take a rough notebook, and then or you can practice it without any notebook also. For example, there is a topic called preamble. So you will close your book and you will start remembering what is important about preamble. So there are different keywords in the preamble like the sovereign, socialist, secular, etc. And there are also different dates given. One date is given, that 26th of November 1949. That is what is given in the preamble. And there are certain Supreme Court judgments like the Berubari Union case, LIC case, Keshwananda Bharti case, which are related to the preamble. So this is how you will start remembering the important dates, facts, associated information related to that particular topic. And whenever you feel that you forgot something, then you will open that book and you will analyze where you are forgetting the topics. So then you will underline that particular important information, or you will read it again and again so that you will memorize that. So this is how your revision should look like. It should look like an active engaging with yourself rather than simply opening the book and reading for a lot of time. So this active recall method has personally helped me in strengthening my weak areas and also analyzing certain important things in the preparation. And broadly, I'll give you 4 important steps for prelims. For example, the static becomes very important. Number of times we undermine the importance of static and we'll give a lot of emphasis on current affairs. But you see, current affairs is never ending. No matter how much you read in the current affairs section, there is only something that can appear in the paper, prelims GS paper. So you see the return on investment on current affairs is very less. On the other side, if you have a good understanding of the static, you can solve a lot of questions through intelligent guessing, analysis of the options, etc. So keeping these things in mind, you should actually put more emphasis on static. Keep in mind, like, you need to have certain 3 cycles of static revision, and then PYQ analysis becomes important, and giving mock test, and also the current affairs. And there is also a dilemma regarding the giving mock test, like is it mandatory to give prelims mock test, or like which institute ka mock test should I join, queries like that. So for that, I'll give you just one example. I have practiced the Vision IAS free PDFs available on the internet. So these were the mock test of the previous year, not the current year. So what I did was, the schedule was given and the mock test schedule also given. So I used to read those topics, the static topics, and I used to attempt the test in an exam-like condition. So after completing the test, I used to evaluate my own performance, and whatever are the questions that I ticked wrong, I used to write the information or the points which I noted down wrong. So I used to write it back at the end of my paper. So in this way, I have a lot of notes out of my mock test, and time and again I used to revise those notes and also revise the static and the mapping, etc, etc. So in this way, I've seen a score of almost 40 marks increase in my prelims score. For example, in the 2023 attempt, I could not even clear the cutoff. So I fell short some 5 to 6 marks below the cutoff. But in this year, in both the papers, I've got almost 30 marks plus the general cutoff. So I got 107 in the GS and somewhere around 96 in the CSAT. So this huge jump was due to this analysis, planning and consistent revision. So broadly, I can say that you have to understand your strength and weakness areas in different subjects, and accordingly you should plan and give more cycles of revision, place more emphasis on static, and the more you analyze, the better you will perform in the prelims exam. So this is how prelims preparation will look like. And if I have to tell something about the PYQs, the role of PYQs in the prelims, it is one word, it is immense. So once you start practicing those PYQs, you will try to understand the themes. What are the themes that are being repeated?